Welcome to the Root of It All podcast with Tree, where you will learn new habits for human betterment. We talk about all things related to personal growth, and everything is on the table. Each episode will explore different topics like self-care, mindfulness, goal setting, and more, with a focus on practical tips and actionable advice you can start implementing in your life today. Our goal is to help you become the best version of yourself and live a more meaningful life. So grab a drink, cozy up, take your dog for a walk, or go for a drive. Join us for some fun and meaningful conversations with some amazing humans. Let's grow together.
Hey everybody, Tree here again from The Root of It All with Tree, and today we are talking with Kyle. So Kyle, I've been working with, he's a personal trainer at the Burlington Centre, Goodlife, and I've been working with him for probably, almost 2 years now or something like that. And just today we found out that my body fat ratio is down 3%. What does that mean?
So body fat percentage down 3%. So essentially the body fat percentage to lean body mass ratio is the ratio between your muscles, so your lean tissue, such as your bone, connective tissue, relative to your fat mass. So overall, that's really great for her to reduce that body fat percentage and have an increase in that lean tissue, which is only going to increase your metabolism, right? So good for you, Tree. I'm really proud of you.
Well, and thanks for saying okay to do this, right?
Yeah.
And to talk to everybody. So some of the themes that you and I talk about in terms of mobility, like a lot of clients that I see that are coming for weight loss, sometimes it's like a mobility thing that either they're deciding in their mind that they can't do, and you've seen it many of times that people can generally do more than what they think that they can, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. So a lot of people do come to see me strictly just for weight loss, but then as I assess and over time, I start to notice limitations in their mobility or their stability or their ability to move properly, right? And do the movements properly in the gym so that they could get to their intended goal. So what I specialize in is the biomechanical side of things. I love to assess movement and make sure everyone's moving properly and through a full range of motion as effectively as possible so that they can not only effectively exercise, but get the most out of each exercise they do so that they can expend as much energy as possible so that they can get to their fat loss goals rather than just randomly moving through movements and without thinking about certain things. And I think that's like a really key part about training that a lot of people don't necessarily succumb to or think about. So
And what would be the most common mobility issues that people have?
Um, so there's a wide variety. I notice a lot of shoulder, especially in the gym, and then lower back, excessive mobility, I'd say. So hip and shoulder are the two joints in the body that have the highest amounts of mobility, but due to the nature of people's jobs, lives these days, people don't move as much. So their mobility in their shoulders and hips become highly restricted. So now, because those big joints can't move as well, you're getting a lot of compensation from the spine, getting a lot of compensation from the neck, which is not good as well. And a lot of times leading to issues in those areas. So enhancing shoulder and hip mobility is so crucial for a lot of people in the gym setting.
And what would you say would be the top, say, like 2 exercises for shoulders and then 2 exercises for hips to that say somebody, whether they wanted to just work out at home on their own, or if they wanted to go to the gym, what would be the starting point?
Yeah, so the goal is just to keep it simple in the beginning because no one's gonna do it if it's a little bit too complex. So
Mhm.
the shoulder and the hip they move in multiple different ways. So making sure that those mobility drills target those specific movements. So for example, the shoulder could rotate internally and then rotate externally. So that would be part of the workout or mobility program. I got to make sure we give them exercises to do that actually enhance their internal and then external rotation. So there's different things you can do to enhance that, right? I love banded work. So you could take a band, do some pull-up parts. You could open up the chest to improve their external rotation. So there's different things you can do.
Mhm.
Um, for the hip, I like the 90-90. So making sure that your limbs are both in 90 degree positions.
Mhm.
and you're really opening up that deep glute. That's really going to open up the internal and external rotation of the hip as well. And then the shoulder and the hip also move through flexion and then extension. So making sure that they're able to actually bring their arm overhead
Yeah.
without
So for
compensation.
so for people like me, that's up and down. Flexion and what did you say? Flexion and what?
Extension.
Yeah, flexion and extension. So he was just moving his arm like up and down. And so the cool thing about what I'm learning from you, Kyle, like right now, just how you're describing these things is basically it's like more of a rotation as opposed to just, doing chest press or doing like
Yeah,
some traditional things that people tend to think that that is what they need to do. Like, so it's more about utilize and correct me if I'm wrong too, right? So it's more about utilizing the fundamental ways that the shoulder is supposed to move, right? Because it does like
sure.
it is you're using the word like rotation, you're not using chest press, you're not using like overhead press. If somebody wants to protect their shoulder, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, it's more creating the rotation so that they're working all of the tiny little supportive muscles. Is that right? Am I right in saying that?
No, yeah, you're very accurate there. So rotation is a key indicator of performance, your ability to rotate, and you need rotation to produce force from these very strong joints. So if you're limited in your ability to rotate from the shoulder and the hip, not only your force production may be limited when you are lifting weights, but your day-to-day life, your ability to move into certain positions, your ability to feel good is actually going to be somewhat limited as well. So when I'm programming for clients like you, I'm making sure that I am optimizing your rotation and your ability to rotate your shoulder and hip so that you can produce force properly rather than doing a lot of bilateral or symmetrical type movements like the traditional chest presses and squats. I like to do unilateral work, single arm work, right? Things that require you to rotate and move into different positions, which is very valuable over time to keep you healthy and strong.
Yeah, like carrying groceries out from the car.
Yeah,
And doing
exactly,
like
right? Yeah,
everyday stuff. Yeah, like
yeah, the
carrying my
farmer's walks, right?
yeah. But and teach me more about the what did you say? Call it like force press or what's the wording that you use? Like what is that?
Force production.
First, yeah, what is that?
So force production. So what I study with like biomechanics is essentially the study of how your body responds to and produces force. So whenever I'm going to give you an example. So when you go in for a body weight squat per se, you have to apply force into the ground in order to get your body back up and drive and resist your weight, right? So you
Mhm.
drive yourself back up, right? So your body has to produce force into that ground somehow, and you mainly get that from not only just muscle of course is going to be the prime factor there, but your ability to rotate through your joints and to compress and drive force in the ground so that you can get back up are key factors to that as well. And then as you get stronger in the gym, your ability to produce force is going to become better, but
Mhm.
not necessarily more efficient, right? So that's where sometimes problems result, as well as if you're inefficiently producing force and you're using other structures in the body, such as the lower back, to produce that force. And now you're getting compensations from areas that you don't like, and pain results from that, right? So there's
Right.
different things, different etiologies, but that's generally kind of what I study. Yeah.
Yeah, and for me working with you for a long period of time, it's been really cool in terms of the transformation myself that I felt like in terms of, we've also been working on handstand and then, the way that you came about to for me to do certain exercises to create the mobility, the strength, and even the balance because every human being is not balanced. So tell me a little bit more about that, like just the imbalances. What's the biggest imbalance that you've seen or what, and also what it is that you work towards to create more of a balance?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. So our bodies, it's really interesting. Our bodies naturally have a bias toward the right side. We are heavier naturally on the right side. So
Oh,
uh, the liver is a massive organ that sits on the right side of our body. Our lung is actually bigger on the right, and then our diaphragm, our breathing muscle, is actually
oh,
larger on the right as well. So
interesting.
yeah, so our body actually compensates to the right because gravity is just naturally pulling us downward. So a lot of people are gonna get locked up in their right hip due to that, just because of the force of gravity. And your body has an interesting way of reorganizing itself based on the force of gravity, and it's always responding to keep your center of mass in a correct spot. Right. So a common compensation I see all the time is that right hip is locked up and you can't necessarily move as well into that hip. And
Mhm.
people end up either like bending from the spine or driving the knee inward, right, on that side. So that is something to really work on and pay attention to in terms of opening up the right hip. And then the left shoulder I find is typically unstable in a lot of people because of this as well. Because if your body's pulling you down on the right, that left shoulder is going to hike up and compromise the stability at that joint. So those are some things to look for
That's
when you're assessing.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And so people that are listening to this, what they need to know about Kyle as well is that how passionate you are. Like even just as he's answering these questions, like he just there's this passion that's behind it, which is so awesome. And what I appreciate when I'm working with you as well is because you're truly genuinely interested and I love the way that you come at it is the same way that I do with any client is that you're looking at the human in front of you and then you're stepping into tons of curiosity about what's going on with that human body, right? And you're taking all of the knowledge and the experience that you've had over the years, and then you're creating the exercise program or the fitness program that the human body needs for the person, which is awesome. And so I know that you wanted to also talk a bit about the biomechanisms. Am I saying that right? And the
Oh,
optimize
biomechanics. I already
biomechanics.
introduced
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. And the to
That's kind of my
optimize.
background though, like what I like to learn about.
Yeah.
Um, what I have been talking about is kind of biomechanics and like the study of how your body responds and produces force, right? And how your joints move, is
Okay.
that. And then when it comes to combining that with anatomy, and like anatomy is the study of how the structure of our body, right? So combining functional anatomy and then biomechanics, now you can truly understand how humans like move through
Mhm.
space. And it's so important for other trainers to understand these concepts because now you can just make a way better exercise program for that specific individual because now
Mhm.
you understand how they move and like what maybe limitations they have and what's because every single no person no people shouldn't have the same exercise program. Like each person should have their individualized plan
Yeah.
based on their individual characteristics, right? So
Yeah.
that's with anything. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what would you say, like if I were to ask you some myths that people like clients of yours that have come in and had. So for example, like some clients that come in, they'll say to me like, "Oh, I can't lose weight because I'm in menopause," or "I can't lose weight because I have osteoarthritis in my knees." Like from your experience, clients that have come in and you've broken the myth that they've decided in their own mind or and they surprised themselves and surpassed.
Hmm. That's a great question. I'll have to think about that one for a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, so comment like anything. So it could be either fat loss or
Yeah.
pain
Yeah.
management.
Yeah.
A big one is like when people come in with pain is like, oh, I gotta stretch. That's like the first thing they think about. Oh, I have to stretch this area. Like, oh, I should just stretch that area more. And like and part of that is true, but not necessarily. I feel like for example, if someone did come in with hip pain, more often than not, the true cause of the issue is going to be somewhere else within the body, and it's
Mm,
important to find that out, right?
okay.
So, like I said before, it's like if someone comes in with a locked up hip, their hip is bothering them. Rather than only stretching the hip, maybe let's see what the knee's doing. Let's see what the foot is doing. Let's see what the lumbar spine, the lower back, how that is moving, right? Is that compensating, right? So instead of only looking at the site of pain, it's important to really look at other areas and really assess what is going on. Have more of a systemic approach rather than just looking at that one area and just deciding to stretch it and think it's going to get better at, right?
Yeah, and that's the great thing about you because that's you're so in curiosity when you're looking at your clients, right? So, and that's really good. That's what you want that in a trainer is that they're if you are made up in your own mind saying like, oh, well, I got a bum knee, and you're as a trainer is looking at it, well, hey, just let's maybe increase the strength in the muscle around the knee, or maybe it's the hip or whatever else, or lumbar spine or whatever those
Yep.
other things that yeah, which is what you want because the human body that we are all blessed with. That's the only one we have,
Yeah,
right?
for sure. It's
So
probably the most valuable thing, right? Like if you don't take care of your body, then Um,
Yeah, if you don't
yeah,
have your health, then
possible.
so let's go on to what would you say is the most challenging thing that you've put your body through physically? Like, because you're an athlete, right? Like, and I know you're doing this run that you did,
Yeah,
but is that the most challenging thing that you've done, or have you like done other things?
it's a good question. I mean, I've played multiple sports. I was a rugby player. I played football in high school, soccer, hockey. So I have had different types of challenging within sport. But
Yeah.
when it comes to my own individual training, I think it's this past year when I'm training for this marathon, this 42-kilometer run. I've gone for some pretty long runs that I before didn't believe I could actually do and perform without stopping, but I have been able to do that. And the training process has really made me just a stronger individual. My mindset has changed, and I feel like I'm growing each time I go for a longer run. So I'm really excited to finally complete my first marathon in October.
That's
I think,
awesome.
yeah,
And that's what you want, like, in any human too, that the fact that you're actually living what you're teaching your clients, right? What you're training your
sure.
clients, you're living it, you're pushing yourself and even going through like all the sports and how to do all of that, navigate through from sport to sport. If you were to pick what sport is your favorite to play?
I would say I really enjoy playing football, American football. It was probably the sport I was best at. I played linebacker, so I was on the defense and I was tackling guys. That was my job, is just to tackle the running back
Just
and
to
make
get
sure
in
that
there.
yeah, exactly.
Just
But
get
it
in
was
there.
fun. It was fun, and I love watching football. So it's a big part of my life. Um, so it's definitely something I definitely going to follow for the rest of my life. And I love training like an athlete. I love to view exercise as training and training like an athlete rather than just, oh, exercise, getting through that day, getting through
Yeah.
that lift. Rather, like I like doing the athletic based stuff, and I think the majority of the population should adopt that mindset and become their own athlete. Right? Start, maybe sign up for a 5K, do whatever they like to do, but train for something. I think that's very powerful. Like you, like you're kickboxing now, and I love that for you because that's something to train for, and you could start evolving and growing in that category, right? So instead of just having exercise be something that you have to get through or be a task, I think it's important to view it as you're training for something.
Yeah, and having fun doing it, right?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
you and I, we joke around all the time. Like we're cracking jokes left, right, and center.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
we're
Like,
laughing all the way through. And it's a lot of fun as we're working out, which makes it go by so much faster and gaining strength and all of these things. And so what would like as us as a human race, right? If you were asked the question, Kyle, what should us as a human race focus on when it comes to health? What would be your top three things
okay.
that you would, if you only got to pick three, what would be the top three things that you would say for overall health?
Okay. Yeah, this is a great question. So right now there is an obesity epidemic, especially in North America. A lot of it is due to lack of exercise, and we are surrounded by fast food restaurants, Uber Eats, like things like that, making our life way more efficient. So that is one thing for sure. I think everyone should value, is that like you want to keep your body fat percentage relatively low relative to your lean body mass, like your muscle, and keep that muscle tissue high. Maintain that ratio is so important just for general health, and feeling happy too, because it's only going to enhance your mood as well, right? So that's the one thing. Another thing is strength. So making sure that you maintain strength in all joints. So maintaining mobility and stability in each joint,
Mhm.
and making sure that you don't necessarily have to lift like 500 pounds for one rep. That's not what strength necessarily is. It's making sure that all joints are strong. You're able to move in different ranges of motion with strength and stability, and you're able to function well throughout every
Yeah.
day.
And what I'm gonna add to that is when you and I first started together, I used to get some knee pain because I wear high heels all the time. And since we've built up this strength in like my legs and all around my knees, I never get knee pain anymore. And I still wear heels.
So
So so
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, perfect, right? And
Yeah. So
yeah,
what would be the third
those
one?
little things can limit your ability to get through the day, right? Or work,
Yep.
right? So you want to make sure that you're as happy as possible. And then that leads into the third one. I'd say psychological health. Exercise is maybe the best drug for psychological health.
Hmm.
I see it all the time, and when people start working with me, they just get happier, right? And it is so important to have a structured exercise and diet plan so that your psychological health is maintained, and you're able to get through day to day still being happy and productive and all that. Because depression, anxiety is way too prevalent right now, and it's becoming definitely an issue. And there's health practitioners like us really busy trying to help people get through their everyday lives happily, right? So
Yeah, and you and I have had that conversation multiple times how when, I always focus on how I'm gonna feel when I leave, right? Because I know that I have more energy, being self-employed, working long hours and things like that. Like I feel way better with working out and even upping it more than, just it was twice a week and now it's like 3 times a week and I'm gonna add back yoga again. And it's so important for overall health and for mental health, physical health, and spiritual health, right? Because if we're not moving our body, then we can get caught up in our thoughts and our minds. Our thoughts can turn into going down unuseful rabbit holes. But when we're moving our body, we're actually moving through any unuseful energy, right? Like thoughts are energy. Even what is it that you called it again? The force, the like
for production.
force production? Yeah, like
Yeah,
that's moving energy,
for sure,
right?
for sure.
Yeah, it's like you're letting go and you're letting go of energy, you're letting go of thoughts, you're changing the thoughts, and also you're actually having like a human body experience. Because if we're not having human body experiences, we're ending up making up experiences in our head.
Yeah,
And sometimes those can be unuseful, right? Like we could, you're beating yourself up or whatever, but when you're working out, you're having an accomplishment. You're, getting the blood flowing even more, right?
for sure. I completely agree. And to add on to the three big or health benefits, I'd
Yeah.
say is social relationships, maintaining really good social relationships, and make sure you're talking to someone face to face every single day instead of just staying cooped up in your home for psychological health. I've noticed even when I started my personal training job, my mental health enhanced like significantly
Mhm.
relative to being staying in a university house, studying online. And it's just so important for people to understand that and make sure that they maintain healthy relationships with people.
Yeah, this human thing, even, and it's good that we're getting back to the human thing, like connecting with other human beings. Even this morning, I'm part of this BNI group, and we're talking about going back to full time in person, which I think is great because even from building business relationships, connecting with other people from an energetic standpoint is so much better. And it's so funny even because you and I had this conversation before too about how kinesthetic I am, and also you're very kinesthetic as well. And most personal trainers are because they're kinesthetic, right? Their job is to move their body. And so it's interesting that over the pandemic, it was hard to do online training because it's like it was just very
Yeah.
difficult, even though I loved moving my body. But so what would you say if somebody is looking for a personal trainer, what should they look for in order to find one that they connect with the most?
That's another great question, because I think when someone is signing up for personal training, the relationship with the personal trainer is so key. Like you need to have that, and because if you don't have that, you're not gonna get the same experience, and you're not gonna get your money's worth as much, right? Like it's so important to have a healthy relationship with someone. So I'd say having someone that is like-minded. So when it comes to say education, like whatever your goal is or whatever your intent is to get a trainer is for, make
Sure.
sure that that trainer has the educational background and is passionate toward that field. I'd also say like-minded interests. You want to make sure that you're interested in similar things so that coaching becomes a little bit easier and becoming the client is a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Um,
Like
and
like my like you had to mandatorily like laugh at all my jokes. That was like
yeah, yeah, exactly, right.
great. So that was, and the great thing too,
Prerequisite.
yeah. So yeah, and it is an interesting thing too. And even about, you and I have had this conversation before about having the right amount of push. right? Like, because I said to you, like, you need to push me hard. Whereas for some people, if had your foot on the gas that hard with others, it may not be good, right?
For
Whereas,
sure. For sure.
yeah. So it's what's great about you, Kyle, is that you know when to kind of like hold back or when to push
Yeah,
properly, which is good because I could be my own worst enemy and just like go too far.
exactly.
Where yours like no tree, just take a break. It's good. Like
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
break is good right now.
The 1 second breaks. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's so important to not always just push yourself to the limit every time you go into the gym. Like you want a couple days of the week where you go in and maybe not pushing yourself to the limit, but still getting some stuff done.
Mhm,
Intensity management is a key part of my job, even when I'm programming,
mhm.
to make sure that you're not overdoing things too, right? Because overtraining is a big thing as well.
Yeah, not killing the client is a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I poke fun all
Yeah.
the time.
Well, yeah. That
Yeah,
would not
yeah.
be good.
So is there anything else that you want to tell the people about anything about personal training or about yourself or humans in general?
Um, yeah, so when it comes to like an exercise program for people, it's important. I did talk about how it's important to individualize it for yourself and make sure it's individualized for your specific goal. But I do find within a lot of people's exercise routines, they are missing some key things, some key stimuluses that they may be maybe make their exercise program better and more efficient for them. So things that I think about when I am programming for a client and things that are mandatory in my mind are certain stimuluses such as mobility, making sure that you're working on mobility,
Hmm.
stability training. So that doesn't necessarily mean on just walking or standing on one leg. It could be like holding a position, a bottom
Oh
of a
yeah,
squat
you've got
position.
me doing a
Yeah,
whole bunch of different shenanigans on stability
exactly.
stuff, which
Some crazy
is
stuff
so much
sometimes.
fun. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's awesome.
Yeah, so, like, that's a big part of the routine as well. Usually, you do that at the start of your day, and then, you wanna focus on strength. So strength is working within the I'd say working within the 5 to 8 rep range. A little bit lower reps, but your intensity is higher, you're putting on a lot more load.
Hmm.
So that's a different stimulus, and then you have your hypertrophy stimulus, which is building your lean, tissue, like your muscle. So that can stem anywhere from 5 to 30 repetitions with an optimal amount of load in order to build mass. And then you have your conditioning. So you have your aerobic and then anaerobic. So aerobic would be long duration, and then anaerobic would be shorter duration, such as like high intensity interval training and say like sprint sessions, things like that things of that nature. Making sure all those things are in a program is pretty key for optimal gains. That's one thing I'd point out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge and to, even continued fun at the gym for me, that's for sure. And getting me down to that 3%, even more, the whatever you called it. See, that's why I keep you around so that you can remind me of all of these things, the body max index or whatever it is, the fat ratio.
Yeah.
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 Awesome. So if
No,
anyone
no
wants to
problem. Yeah.
yeah, and if anyone wants to contact Kyle, all of his information is going to be in the link with his bio and to contact him if you want to get his services, I would highly recommend. It's awesome. All right. Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Well, folks, that's a wrap for today's episode of The Root of It All with Tree. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. But before we go, I just wanted to remind you that you can follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook or Instagram. And we will be posting motivational quotes and behind the scenes content that you won't want to miss. You can always sign up to come live while we're filming this, or even join us online through Zoom. We always offer open question and answer after each episode that we don't record, so it's all private, but you can get more involved. So sign up for free at businessgrowthresults.com, and we're going to cover all kinds of different topics that you're not going to want to miss. And if you're looking for that one-on-one guidance or help, be sure to book a free screening. You can do that at burlingtonhypnosis.ca or call 905-634-4777. And finally, you can catch our podcast on all major podcast platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. So be sure to subscribe and never miss an episode. Thanks for listening.